now, though, we go to the Boomer Jack's Bar and Grill Hotline, and joining us live via Zoom, Joel Anderson of Slate and the Hang Up and Listen podcast, and one of my favorite listens of 2023, the Slow Burn podcast, detailing the life and times of Clarence Thomas, and the fact that randomly finding out that he was a Cowboys fan or is a Cowboys fan still blows my mind to this day. Joel Anderson joining us here on the Get Right. Joel, what's going on?
I'm good, man. Y'all hear me on my professional setup too. You know,
it looks amazing and sounds amazing.
This is the real mic and everything. But yeah, Clarence Thomas had the Dallas Cowboys come in to film a whole, public service announcement when he was working at the EEOC. So it had like Doug Cosby. I'm trying to think if I had to start with Doug Cosby, wasn't nobody else that much famous on that. But it was like 3 or 4 of them, but I think Doug Cosby was the headliner. So
that was just a fantastic list. I encourage anyone to listen to that podcast.
Joel, you also did you did the Tupac. You did a third one, right? David Duke was
LA
Josh,
Riots.
right? LA Riots was the third one. That's right.
I did the LA Riots one. Yeah, man. Yeah. That was a lot. I mean, fun is maybe not the right word, but man, I love LA, man. I like writing about it and spending those folks down there, man. It's just when you come out here on the West Coast and you meet people from LA, it's just, I don't know. I didn't grow up out here, so it's just something about the folks down there. They remind me of Texas, but with just like a little bit of, I don't know, there's a little, I don't know, Goya, you know what I'm saying? You know what I'm saying? But it ain't Sasheries.
That's right. Well, I mean, we are definitely veering away from the sports of it, but I mean, that's just great migration for you, right? Like the Texas to Southern California pipeline is very well documented.
Hey, man, I had family in Oakland, but you all may have this phenomenon, which is that you have family in California that you just never see. You heard about them. It's like, oh yeah, you got a bunch of cousins out in LA or the Bay or whatever. And it's just like, that's your family, but before Facebook, you just didn't see them. They were out there. So I'm that uncle now. That's basically what I'm saying. I'm that cousin. It's just like, I'm out here. I'm 2-3 hours behind everybody. So, but there's some ways to make it worth it.
That is our play cousin on the Get Right.
That's right. Joel Anderson. That's right.
But before he got into a life of doing hard-hitting capital J journalism again,
that's right.
He was a college football writer at ESPN, and so we love talking to him about college football. But one thing I love about Joel is that he has a fun spirit about him, so he can appreciate these things in the way that we want to, which is, and I say all that preamble to say, how funny is the Michigan Big Ten infighting right now with the sign stealing?
So it's not that it's funny. I'm kind of annoyed by it, because I mean, first of all, it's just taken over so much. Like that is remember it's getting Deion intensity level coverage. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And I was like, the Deion thing is a little more fun to me. What this is about, I mean, come on, man. It's really hard to deduce who's responsible in this circumstance. And so you really like who's reporting it, who's at fault. It's just very murky. And then I'm just sort of dubious about the idea how much knowing somebody's signals can help you. Right. Now, I mean, obviously, there's a lot of coaches that say that it does. I mean, and surely they wouldn't go through the elaborate system if it didn't matter on some level. But I'm just kind of like, did Michigan really need hand signal, knowing Purdue's hand signs to beat them? You know what I mean? Or Indiana or Northwestern or whoever. I mean, they play 2 games a year in the Big Ten, basically.
Yeah.
So I'm like, I mean, did they really need that? The only other thing I had to say before I end this preamble is that, Michigan fans, I don't know about y'all. I kind of grew up rooting for Michigan. Some of it was the Fab Five. Some of it was the players and the helmets or whatever. But as I grew older and met people from Michigan and Michigan fans, here's what I want to know. Like, why do y'all think people hate y'all so much, though? I mean, because I do think that there's some validity to it. But, like, have y'all interrogated why people hate y'all and people are ganging up on y'all and, you all feel, maligned and your credibility has been impugned. Like, why do you think people hate y'all? They should sit in that and reflect.
The self-reflection. What I'm hearing is that Joel Anderson is indirectly calling all y'all dorks. That's what I'm hearing.
It's just dogs. I mean, they're on there. I mean, it's QAnon level, neuroses about this. Well, Ryan Day hired somebody to do that, and then Purdue and Indiana ganged up on us and traded our signs. I'm like, come on, man. Just okay. Let's assume it happened. Why y'all? I mean, the thing is, Ohio State's been better than y'all for longer, more recently. So, I mean, all of a sudden, everybody just decided, man, I hate Michigan. Let's all team up.
Let's take down big bad Jim Harbaugh.
We just take on, y'all, they've not won a playoff game.
All right.
Look, let him talk his talk where he has the opportunity.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's right.
That was the last high point we had. Let me have that, okay?
Okay, so Joel, you also played college football. We want that to be known at Texas Christian University here in the Metroplex. And so I'm interested in seeing, and maybe it just does not get to the level of you on the field, but throughout this, it feels like one of the things that's been coming out, at least to like the public that is not like super college football pilled, is that just how prevalent sign stealing actually is before you get to the level of like technology and video. Can you speak to that? Like how much do you recall the idea of sign stealing in your playing days and then also your reporting days?
I mean, so this is, I'll say from my playing days, which are, I should put playing in quotes.
Your sideline days.
Oh, no, team. Yeah, my sideline. I mean, so I do think it is useful, but I will say that I played in sort of the ancient days of football. My career was over before 2000, right? So there were hand signs, but it wasn't nearly as elaborate. The offenses weren't nearly as sophisticated at the time. And even like if you passed 20, 25 times a game in the late 90s, you were running a high-flying offense. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And some teams just get started. So it wasn't as much a part of the game back then, as I would say. Maybe I'm being a little naive about that, but as a player, it wasn't quite as big a deal. But you hear about it as you get older and certainly covering the sport. And yeah, I mean, I do think that you hear about, teams that employ people on their staff just to read hand signs. The schools that have the resources. Like I doubt, no offense, Louisiana Monroe, but I doubt that, they're able to send people around, I can say that about ULM because my family's from
there. You
Monroe.
go. That's
my
right.
wife is from that very area. So when you said that, I took that real personal. I was like, no, hold on now. No.
Man. No, yeah. my mama, West Monroe, Louisiana. You know what I'm saying? So Ouachita Parish, shout out. But so yeah, I mean, for the schools that had the means, they've always, been able to do this and employ people to do that. And yeah, I mean, so I was reading a story in The Athletic and they interviewed 50 coaches and they're like, well, how much of an advantage is it? And I mean, it was somewhere in the neighborhood, like 45, 46 coaches that all agreed that it was at least like a significant development if somebody is onto your signal. So yeah, I mean, it obviously matters. And if Michigan was doing it in such an elaborate fashion
and getting caught,
right.
And getting caught. See, that's the thing, right? Who's to say that Kentucky's not doing it, right?
Sure.
But they were not dumb enough to delegate that job to somebody that is not trustworthy, which is where I think the real problem with Michigan is, right? It's not about the hand sign stuff. It's about, hey, Jim Harbaugh, you had somebody on your staff just this year that got fired for computer crimes. You briefly employed Bo Schembechler's fail son, and then you had to fire him or have him resign because he was on there tweeting and liking things that probably wouldn't have played real well in homes that you're trying to recruit.
Sure.
You know what I'm saying? So like, to me, this is more of a failure of
what Harbaugh. Kind of shop you running out there, Jim?
Yeah. Right. I mean, the thing is, they can say, well, he didn't know, but they pay you all that money to know, or to at least fall on the grenade. Right.
Can we get into that real quick? I mean, obviously, I would love to get into other college football stuff that's happening right now, but I always find it interesting whenever we get into college football or college sports scandals and the attempt at insulation of the top guy continues to be there, except a lot of the sell of the top guy, whether they're in living rooms or at boosters, is that I am running this thing top to bottom. I know everything. This is my program, except whenever it comes time for actual real life responsibility and accountability, that insulation of, well, I didn't know always comes up. Like, what do you make of that dichotomy?
Oh, no. I mean, that's a very real dichotomy. I mean, in your entire life of covering NCAA investigations or knowing about them, reading about them, I mean, have you ever heard of a coach that said that that said I knew what was going on and I directly implicate myself in it. I've never heard of a head coach that taking that sort of responsibility, which is really ironic because that is the sort of thing that they try to, impart into the players, right? Take responsibility. It may not be your fault, but it's your responsibility. That kind of stuff that I heard my entire life. It's just kind of funny how they're able to shirk those responsibilities. So, yeah, man, I think that, the coaches, so I think it is plausible that Jim Harbaugh doesn't know, or that a coach in this situation might not know. But the issue is that you're intentionally employing people to prevent you from knowing, so that you're not implicated in things that are going on in your program. To me, that sounds like if you got to do that, you're doing stuff in your program that are not above board, and it merits further investigation. So the thing is, if you don't know, you should have known. Right?
Go ahead.
No, go ahead. No, go, I'm good.
Joel Anderson of Slate joining us here on the Get Right with Reggie KG here on 105.3 The Fan as we continue our fun college football conversation. Let me take it to Deion real quick because I got to ask you about this before we let you go for sure. Where are you at with the Deion phenomenon in Colorado? And it feels like it's kind of settled down a little bit because, as my partner has astutely pointed out throughout the course of all this, hey, man, you got to continue to win for this thing to kind of continue to keep up. And right now, they're not necessarily doing that at this point.
Well, this is always the sort of the flip side of the coin with Deion, right? Is that what would it look like for him to endure a protracted period of futility or losing? And one thing, so I'm not going to pretend that I wasn't one of the people that thought that as a TCU alum, I wanted Deion there because I wanted some of that heat, some of that energy at the program. But the thing about Deion is that he very rarely takes responsibility for what goes on. We were just talking about that, right? And that goes back to his days at Prime Prep and everything else. It's like, I'm not at fault. He didn't take any responsibility for anything that went on down there, or the violations that happened at the school that he coached at right after that either. So, I'm worried about him now because at first I thought, okay, like this is really new, this is really fresh. He's got a lot of energy, a lot of people on the sidelines, but I think the way that he's handled this has been all wrong. And then, throwing your players under the bus after a game. Like, people were saying, kids are looking at that. I don't think that's the issue. I think it's that their coaches are watching that. Their high school coaches, their 7-on-7 coaches, their parents are watching. They're watching Deion say, when I have no more use for you, anything goes. I can run you off. I'll run you down in the press, say you're not good. That's not really a good look. And another part of that is essentially demoting your offensive coordinator, Sean Lewis, who prior to this, everybody was saying that was one of the revelations of Colorado. He was a great play caller. They'd gotten a lot out of a little, right? That they had a really productive offense in spite of some limitations on the offensive line and in the backfield. And then you demote him the week after a loss. And it's just kind of like, come on, man. And then you've got to, that's again, assistant coaches, aspiring offensive coordinators, they're looking at that. When there are other good jobs at play, they're looking at that. And then, you can look at his recruiting. If you go on 24/7 right now, that recruiting class, I want to say, is like 2 spots ahead of Colorado State, right?
Wow.
And so, obviously, his plan is to work the portal, right? Like he said, I think it was like the 40-40-20 plan, something like that, like grads, and recruiting, and then transfers. But there's only so many transfers to go around, like good ones, right? Like Alabama wants some of them good ones too. Georgia wants some of those good ones too. Texas wants some of those good ones too. And you're going to have to make a case for them. And they can look and see what's going on right now, and it doesn't look great. So, look, it's an accomplishment for him to have won as many games as he has. That we even are talking about there was a potential for a bowl game. Yes, the season is a success in that way. But the way he's handling failure makes me wonder if it imperils what happens in years 2 and 3, if we get that far.
All right, Joel, I got to get you on some college football at the very top. This is a fun year because I don't think that there's a definitive team that you can look at and go, that is definitely the best team in the nation without any level of debate. However, what is the team that you look at that you were convinced is the best team in the nation right now?
This is tough. I really still think Georgia, probably. If I had to guess, like
that's big of you, Joel. That's real big of you.
He's in his feelings because his team couldn't beat them this past week.
Look what I would be a fool to deny Georgia's greatness, right? I would be a fool. Like I may be a hater, but I ain't a fool. And so I think Georgia has the highest floor and the highest ceiling of all the teams left. I think Florida State, like if they're hitting all cylinders and they're playing really well and Jordan Travis is getting it out to Keon Coleman, yeah, I think that maybe they're the second best team in the country. Potential they could maybe beat Georgia in a game, but I also have seen them play really poorly this year. Georgia has had some not great games, but they've not had a bad game so far this year. And so I think that says something. And I just think, they're kind of ramping up. They're ramping up as the season goes along. So I don't think they're great. I don't think they're as good as the previous 2 years, but they don't have to be to win the national championship this year, I think.
Joel, tell the folks where they can find you. What you got going on these days, man?
Man, I'm just writing, man. I'm back at slate.com writing and coming up with some ideas for some podcasts to come. I just did some stuff on the Tupac, the arrest in the Tupac case and, covering the guy that has been implicated in that murder for the last
by
few
himself
years, so.
for 10 years.
Yes. It don't make no sense. In the story, I talk about how I talked to Keefe D.
Yes.
Yeah. And he's an interesting dude. But anyway, so this is crazy. You all had me on. We were talking about everything. We ended up talking about the dude that's implicated in the murder of Tupac, right? That's why I love coming on with y'all. But yes, anyway, yeah, man, I'm working on some stuff and just kind of coming up with some podcast ideas, and that's about it.
And also, I want you to know the people do appreciate you because on the text line from the 817, you got to ask him about being the fastest 10-year-old in the country. So the people know about your bona fides, and they still want you to talk about them to these days.
Oh, they still. I know I won't bore y'all with it, but yeah, I was great. When I was it was my first year of track. I got recruited at a elementary school meet. They brought me out the first track meet. I ran in 100. I got like second place in my heat, and by the end of the year, yeah, I was a national champion, dog. And it took me 4 or 5 months. I was
wow.
I could go, man. I was in my day, man. I had a little something.
And if it wasn't for LaDainian Tomlinson, if it wasn't for him,
bro. Look, man, or Basil Mitchell or Charles Jones, my boy Charles Jones, who still is there in Fort Worth. Shout out, all them dudes. But yeah, man, look, the one thing about it, and I hope all these kids are listening. It ain't about where you at 10, it's where you at when you're 18. Okay.
Joel, appreciate the time as always, my man. Thank you so much.
Oh, my pleasure. Anytime, brothers.